In this video we attempt to fly to Wingland and back from Bedford. I'm flying to meet Lee at Grafham Water before heading on to Wingland, but due to strong headwinds for the return flight, will we make it back? So it's the 6th of February, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. We're going to fly to Wingland. The flight to Wingland should be about an hour and a half. It's 60 miles, so I'm flying from a field near Bedford to Wingland. I'm going to meet Lee on the way, that's the plan. I'm going to meet Lindsay, who's very kindly offered to refuel us. I'm a little bit concerned about the winds because with an 8-mile-an-hour tailwind, my forecasted flight time back is probably somewhere around 3 hours. So I may not make it back on a full tank. As always, we'll see what happens. So I've just put the windsock up. Expecting the wind to be coming from the southwest, but it looks like it's on the ground. It's kind of swirling around. The wind at around 500 feet is a southwesterly, but on the ground it's looking like a northeast. So it's one of those mornings where you set your wing up and it could just switch on you. So that makes me a little bit nervous, to be honest. It's quite misty. Temperature on the ground is around -3 degrees C, but forecasted it could get up to 8 degrees later. Taking the Hadron 3 today. So the ground is frozen. I normally wouldn't take it from this field because it's quite a muddy field, but the Hadron 3 is the wing of choice, the wing of dreams. Quite low winds on the ground, probably less than 1 mile an hour. 60-mile flight. It's not the longest I've done. Brand new prop, first flight. So it has to be tight, so tight that you can barely do it. So I'm wrapped up very warm for this flight. I've got several layers on. I've got 2 fleeces. I've got my flying suit. But the conditions are spectacular with the mist in the distance. Really great views. This here is St Neots power station. So I've stowed my throttle using cruise control. I'm just texting Lee to find out where he is. Lee replies and tells me he's near the 4 wind turbines in the distance there. And here he is. So we plan to fly up to the west of Conington and Peterborough, over the city, and then up to the west side of Finland. So we're just flying from the west side of Peterborough now. We go right over the city and we see Peterborough Cathedral, a Norman cathedral dedicated to St Peter, St Paul and St Andrew. It is known for its imposing early English Gothic west front with 3 enormous arches. The appearance of the west front is slightly asymmetrical as one of the towers was never completed. We're now heading out of the east side of Peterborough towards Thorney and the brickworks there in the distance, and we're starting to see a little bit of fog and mist. Now the fog seems to be increasing. I did check the Wingland webcam before departure and it was clear, but it looks like the fog could be rolling in, so that was a slight cause for concern. I'm just hoping that the southwesterly winds is blowing the fog away from us and not towards us. And there's Wingland down below. So we're going to come in for a landing, warm up, have a cup of tea, have some food, and wait for Lindsay, who's very kindly offered to come and bring some fuel so we can fuel up for the return flight. We are down. Wingland Airfield. So thanks so much, Lindsay, for doing the fuel run for us. It made this trip much easier, so thanks again. So after lunch and warming up a bit for a couple of hours, start kiting my wing, and I noticed that the wind is around 10 to 12 miles an hour and gusting a little bit, so I'm slightly concerned.
Nice.
So after takeoff, immediately trim out and then get the speed bar on. Just hoping that the winds die off on the way back. Now the weather forecast did say that they would die off from 3 p.m. onwards. So I'm hoping that I can fly for 2 hours on speed bar, make maybe 2/3 of the journey, and then speed right up towards the end and hopefully make it to Bedford before my fuel runs out. So it was actually quite gusty down below, so I've decided to fly above 1600 feet where the air was much smoother. Jeff messaged me and said, why don't you come over to Alconbury? I've got my drone, so he's got some great drone shots for us. And Alconbury is a former RAF base near Huntingdon that was opened in 1938 for use by RAF Bomber Command and later used by the US Army Air Force from 1942. King George VI visited the station in 1942, and it was announced in 2015 that the station would be closing by 2020. So as I get over Grafham Water, I'm noticing that my speed is increasing on the speed bar, getting up to 38, 40 miles an hour. So at this point, I realise I might make it back. Do check my fuel, and I've got about 5 or 6 litres left. So I come off the speed bar and just leave the trims out. And now I realise I'm going to make it back.
Well, made it back from Wingland. Wasn't sure if I would, with the strong wind. Last hour the wind seems to have eased up quite a bit. Let's lose some altitude. Coming straight in for a landing. Don't think I need to look at the SOC. Maybe I should do a circuit like a good pilot. And I'm down! Oh yeah, back at the van. Mission accomplished! Wow.
Nice.
So everyone, when you come into land, always check the SOC. I was convinced it was blowing 90 degrees that way. Even on a 1 hour flight it can change. What an absolutely epic trip. I was quite nervous, to be honest with you, about the trip on the way back. The wind at Wingland was probably 10 to 12 miles an hour, and I was thinking I'm not going to make a 60-mile trip back to Bedford with that kind of headwind. But luckily, halfway into the trip, the wind's dropped off, and as you can see from the windsock behind me, it's quite light winds now. In fact, I can barely feel it. I was on speed bar for the first part of the flight, and then just eased off on maybe about quarter bar, just put my feet on the bar. As just like a footrest really, more than anything. So the trip back was 2 hours and 15 minutes. I was expecting it to be 3 hours and 15, to be honest, maybe 3.5.